Chapter 1. The Password. It all started with a tray of muffins. Banana nut, if you must know, still warm and soft, the kind where you can smell the cinnamon and the nuts before they even come close to your face, carrying that distinct, comforting scent of baked warmth. The muffins were slightly lopsided, imperfect, charmingly rustic, the kind that suggested homemade love rather than factory precision. A deliberate counterpoint, I would later realize, to the unnerving perfection of the woman who carried them. She moved with an almost ethereal lightness, a glide rather than a walk, and her smile was so dazzling it should have required a permit, bright, wide, almost blinding, with a hint of something just a little too perfect, like a photograph that had been photoshopped one step too far. "Hi, we're the Porters, just moved in next door," she chirped, her voice light and bubbly, almost too rehearsed, like a well-practiced infomercial. Her eyes, the color of a summer sky, sparkled with an almost frantic excitement, and maybe a dash of something else. Urgency? A subtle, barely perceptible tremor that I, Rebecca Monroe, whose internal alarm system had been finely tuned since birth to be suspicious of extroverts and strangers bearing baked goods, immediately picked up on. I was, after all, the kind who triple-checked locks, read user agreements in full, and harbored a deep-seated distrust of anyone who used more than 3 exclamation points in a single sentence. I forced a smile, a brittle, strained thing that felt like it might crack my face. "Oh, how nice. I'm Rebecca. Welcome." My husband, Jamie, shuffled out from the hallway, looking precisely like a man who'd just been dragged into direct sunlight after a long night underground. Sunday mornings were his sacred refuge, a fragile bubble of silence broken only by the gurgle of the coffee maker and the gentle rustle of a newspaper. He offered a half-hearted nod, clearly reluctant to engage, but wanting to be polite, his hair a rumpled testament to the fact that he considered personal grooming an afternoon affair. He carried the scent of freshly brewed coffee and lingering sleep, a stark contrast to the saccharine sweetness now emanating from the muffins. Our 2 kids, Sasha, 13, already fiercely independent and permanently fused to her Nintendo Switch, and Max, 9, a smaller, quieter creature, currently absorbed in a dog-eared copy of Dogman in the corner of the living room, paid absolutely no attention. Sasha's thumbs flew across the tiny console, her brow furrowed in intense concentration, while Max's lips moved silently, utterly immersed in his comic, a world away from the polite, strained pleasantries at the front door. They were in their own digital cocoons, shielded from the awkwardness of new neighbor interactions. A part of me envied them their obliviousness. "We're just getting settled," the muffin woman, whose name I vaguely recalled as Melissa, continued, undeterred by the lukewarm reception, her voice still tinkling like glass. She set the tray gently on the kitchen counter, as if it were a fragile artifact. "Still waiting on our internet to be hooked up, actually. The provider had a little hiccup." Her gaze flickered to our own internet router, sitting innocently by the main power outlet, a small, unassuming black box that, unbeknownst to us, was about to become the epicenter of our unfolding digital nightmare. Jamie sighed, rubbing the sleep from his eyes with a groan that seemed resonating with the universal frustration of modern life. Ugh, nightmare. Everything's online these days. My smart toothbrush refuses to tell me if I've brushed long enough without Wi-Fi. He managed a weak chuckle, trying to bond over shared tech woes. "Right?" she laughed, the sound tinkling again, a little louder this time. "Even the coffee machine won't function offline anymore. It's like living in the dark ages." She paused, her eyes, those unsettlingly bright eyes, fixed on me. I felt a prickle of unease, a tiny pinprick on the back of my neck. I felt the conversation veering into dangerous territory, the kind of casual digital oversharing that made my skin crawl, and tried to pivot, desperately searching for a safe analog topic. "Do you have kids?" I asked, attempting to steer the conversation towards playgrounds and school zones, anything to divert from network protocols. But Melissa, undaunted, took a step closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, as if sharing a top-secret government plan. Would you mind if we, borrowed your Wi-Fi for a few days? Just until our router gets delivered? We're completely cut off. She produced a theatrical shiver. It's been, honestly, quite isolating. And that was it. The moment the Monroes' lives subtly, insidiously shifted. Decent people with soft hearts and no real grasp of the razor-thin line between neighborly kindness and digital boundaries, we, exchanged a quick, silent glance. Jamie, ever the affable one, gave a small shrug. What could we say? They had muffins, they had that unsettlingly perfect smile. They seemed distressed. So, against my better judgment, we handed over the password, scribbled on a post-it note that felt absurdly flimsy for the weight of what it carried. Monkey Banana 2021. A ridiculous password, yes, one chosen by Sasha during a momentary lapse in my cybersecurity vigilance, but one we thought was temporary, a brief digital handshake. It was not. Chapter 2. The Sinking. By the end of the week, the subtle shift had become an undeniable tremor. Rebecca's smart speaker, usually a deferential servant, had started calling her Beck. Not the familiar, slightly robotic Rebecca it had always used, but a casual, intimate Beck. No one in the Monroe household called her that, not even Jamie, and certainly not the kids, who preferred varying degrees of Mom or Hey you. A first time it happened, a disembodied voice from the kitchen speaker chirping, "Good morning, Beck, here's your flash briefing," I nearly dropped my coffee. I dismissed it as a quirk of some recent software update, a clumsy attempt at personalization. Tech glitches happened, right? Software was always updating, always tweaking, always learning. Then, Jamie's carefully curated Spotify playlists, the auditory sanctuary he retreated to after a grueling day, began to mutate. His usual eclectic mix of classic rock anthems and obscure indie folk was suddenly peppered with incongruous intruders. The ethereal hum of spa meditation music, the embarrassing beats of late 2000s boy bands he'd never downloaded even ironically, and something bizarrely titled Dog Yoga Flow, complete with gentle barks and soothing flutes. He blamed the kids, of course. "Sasha, Max, did you get into my Spotify again? I swear if I hear one more downward-facing dog chant, I'm going to lose it." Sasha scoffed from behind her phone. "Dad, we listen to K-pop and sometimes screaming metal, not whatever dog yoga flow is." Max, looking genuinely bewildered, just shrugged. But the real stomach-dropping shock came one groggy Tuesday morning. The kitchen's smart display, usually a benign photo frame cycling through our own slightly blurry, lovingly candid family snapshots, began cycling through images that no one recognized. Not just random stock photos, no, that would have been easily dismissed. These were eerily familiar, yet profoundly wrong. One showed Max, definitely Max. He was on a bright red scooter, helmet askew, a wide, genuine grin plastered across his face, looking like a kid at the best birthday party of his life. Cute, heartwarming, except Max had never owned a red scooter. Ours was blue, scuffed, and currently languishing in the garage. This Max was different. Another was a blurry snapshot of someone suspiciously like me, Rebecca, laughing, head thrown back, in a vibrant yellow sundress I didn't own, standing in front of a sprawling, unfamiliar house I had never seen before. The angle was off, the lighting slightly too bright, but the person in the photo was me, or a perfect, unsettling doppelganger. My laughter, mirrored in the image, felt alien, distant. "What the hell is that?" Jamie asked, half his avocado toast still suspended in mid-air, his voice a bewildered rasp. He looked at the screen, then at me, then back at the screen, as if trying to reconcile two impossible realities. I stared, a cold knot forming in my stomach. The air in the kitchen suddenly felt thick, heavy with unspoken questions. That's not ours. Is it from the cloud? My work cloud? Yours? My mind scrambled for a logical explanation, any logical explanation. Whose cloud? He replied, his eyes narrowing, tracing the outline of the unfamiliar house on the screen. His voice was quiet now, the earlier irritation replaced by a creeping unease. They both turned slowly, in a synchronized, almost comical movement, to the kitchen window, their gaze settling with an undeniable heavy weight on the Porter's house next door. A freshly delivered package from Smart Home Hub sat on their doorstep, an innocuous cardboard box that now seemed to hum with silent, sinister power. Chapter 3: Digital Neighbors. The weirdness didn't just escalate, it snowballed, gathering speed and menace with every passing digital anomaly. Max's Kindle, usually a battlefield of school assignments and a handful of dog-eared graphic novels, all featuring anthropomorphic animals solving mysteries, suddenly had a new bedtime story at the top of his reading list. It was titled The Sharing House, no author listed, just a cryptic, minimalist illustration of two houses, almost identical to ours and the Porters, connected by a single, glowing, pulsating thread. Max, surprisingly, hadn't noticed. "It just appeared," he mumbled when I asked, his eyes still glued to his comic book. "Maybe it's like a new freebie from Amazon?" A shiver ran down my spine. The title felt too specific, too personal. Sasha's phone, even when she was home alone with her own bedroom speaker unplugged, automatically connected to a Bluetooth speaker labeled Porter Echo 3. The first time it happened, a jarring burst of smooth jazz, a genre Sasha vehemently detested, blasted from the living room. Sasha, convinced Jamie was messing with her, screamed, "Dad, stop it!" Jamie, equally confused, shouted back from his office, "What are you talking about?" The speaker kept playing. I unplugged it, but the chilling realization lingered. It had bypassed her own known devices. The final straw, the one that snapped the tenuous thread of my denial, came one afternoon when I asked our smart assistant, Alexa, to add olive oil to the grocery list. Alexa's usually chirpy voice responded, "Already done, Rebecca. It's on Porter household list too. Anything else, Beck?" The casual familiarity of Beck now felt less like a glitch and more like a deliberate, intimate trespass. My breath hitched. Porter household list? A shared grocery list? This wasn't just Wi-Fi borrowing. This was a digital cohabitation. That was it. I called an emergency family meeting in the living room, a space that suddenly felt charged with an unspoken, unsettling tension, thicker than the dust motes dancing in the afternoon sun. I sat stiffly on the edge of the sofa, my arms tightly folded across my chest, my gaze sweeping over my family. Jamie looked up from his phone, a flicker of mild annoyance in his eyes. "Wait, is this like an actual meeting, Rebecca? With, like, an agenda?" He still preferred to navigate life's problems with a placid, non-confrontational calm. "Yes," I said firmly, my voice betraying none of the escalating panic churning in my gut. "Because we have weird tech stuff happening, and I want to know if anyone here, anyone at all, gave the Porters access to our devices." My eyes settled pointedly on Sasha and Max. Max, ever literal, raised his hand with an earnest frown. "I said hi to their dog. His name is Sparky." "That's not—" I pinched the bridge of my nose, fighting the urge to scream. "That's not what I meant, Max." Sasha rolled her eyes, her arms crossed in a mirror image of my own. "It's probably just Bluetooth overlap or some stupid new smart home feature. Dad, you're always installing weird updates." Her teenage skepticism was impenetrable. Jamie, the eternal pacifist, ever seeking the path of least resistance, offered meekly, "Look, let's just change the Wi-Fi password. That'll fix it, right? It's probably just some fluke. They're nice people, Beck." I wanted to believe him, desperately. So we did. We gathered around the router like ancient shamans performing a digital ritual. Jamie typed furiously. Tofu Penguin 42 was their new fortress, a ridiculous, convoluted string of characters that felt utterly impenetrable. Problem solved, right? The digital barnacles surely couldn't reattach to that. Not even close. Chapter 4. Reconnection. The next morning, the proof of their continued, unwelcome presence arrived with disturbing, sugary sweetness. Another tray of muffins sat on our doorstep. Blueberry this time, plump and glistening with sugar, steaming faintly in the cool morning air, radiating a scent that was both inviting and profoundly unsettling. A small handwritten note was tucked beneath them. "Good morning, Monrose. Thought you might need a little pick-me-up. Melissa." The cheerfulness felt almost taunting. And so was the Wi-Fi syncing. Jamie's smartwatch buzzed with a notification. "Your average sleep last night was 7 hours, 23 minutes. Followed immediately by, "Porter household sleep average, 7 hours, 45 minutes. He stared at it, brow furrowed, his usual morning calm replaced by a silent, growing dread. "How are they back online, Rebecca? And how do they know how long I slept?" His voice was a strained whisper, barely audible above the hum of the refrigerator. My suspicion deepened, hardening into a cold, metallic certainty. The Porters weren't just borrowing bandwidth. They weren't just overeager neighbors. They were tethered to the Monroes like digital barnacles, clinging with an unseen, invasive grip. This wasn't a glitch. This was deliberate, and it felt like observation. I decided it was time for neighborly espionage, my own version of a covert operation, albeit with a Tupperware container as my unlikely prop. That afternoon, feigning the excuse of returning a Tupperware container, which, to be clear, I had absolutely not borrowed, I marched purposefully towards the Porter's house. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Melissa Porter answered the door immediately, as if she'd been waiting, wearing that same unsettlingly bright smile, her eyes sparkling with an almost artificial intensity. The scent of cinnamon and something vaguely metallic hung in the air behind her. "Oh, hey, Rebecca, come on in. You caught us just watching something on the smart frame. Look, that's you guys at the Halloween block party." She gestured towards a large, sleek digital frame on their living room wall, where a familiar image flickered. Jamie, me, Sasha, and Max, all in ridiculously oversized superhero costumes, laughing, uninhibited, totally ourselves. The photo was ours, taken on our phone. I froze, the Tupperware container feeling suddenly heavy in my hand. My mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation, any logical explanation. "That was 3 years ago," I said slowly, each word a stone dropping into a deep, silent well. "We didn't know you then." My voice was barely a whisper. The photo was from before they even moved in. "Oh, someone must have posted it to the neighborhood Facebook page. These things pull from everywhere. Public posts, cloud backups, even old email attachments," Melissa said cheerfully, her smile not wavering for an instant. She gestured vaguely at the screen, as if dismissing the blatant invasion of privacy as a mere technological quirk. I nodded, forcing another tight smile, but inside, a cold, icy drop of suspicion slid down my spine, solidifying into a block of pure dread. This wasn't just about sharing Wi-Fi. This was about our lives. Chapter 5. Upload complete. Back home, I didn't even bother taking off my shoes. My hands trembled slightly as I pulled out my phone and opened our smart home app. The simple, clean interface that usually brought me a sense of control now felt like a portal to something deeply sinister. What I saw next sent a chill through my veins. A cold wave that started at my fingertips and spread through my entire body. Synced devices, 27. My breath hitched. My eyes scanned the list, frantically counting. Only 8 were ours. Our phones, tablets, the smart speaker, the thermostat, the TV, the kids' gaming consoles. The other 19 were labeled with Porter prefixes. Porter living room speaker, Porter front door cam, Porter thermostat, Porter kids room monitor. There were Porter-connected devices on every level, in every room, woven into the very fabric of our digital existence. The front doorbell camera, our front doorbell camera, was now streaming footage to a Porter security hub. A speaker in their bedroom was showing up as a paired device on our network. Their shared grocery list, filled with exotic organic ingredients we never bought, appeared right alongside ours. Even the kids' screen time logs from their devices were showing up on our parental controls, giving me glimpses into Max's alarming daily Fortnite hours. It wasn't just Wi-Fi. It wasn't just borrowing bandwidth. This was integration, a complete, seamless, and utterly uninvited merge of our digital lives. They weren't just neighbors next door. They were living inside our smart home. And maybe, just maybe, it wasn't an accident. Maybe it was intentional, a silent digital annexation. The thought was chilling, far more unsettling than any horror movie. This was real life, filtered through the cold, unfeeling lens of interconnected technology. The urgency I'd seen in Melissa's eyes that first day, the repeated glitches, the effortless reappearance after our password change. It all clicked into place, a horrifying, invisible puzzle. Chapter 6. Disconnect. Rebecca became a woman on a mission. A frantic, almost manic energy pulsed through me, overriding the lingering fear. I was done being digitally colonized. I was going to sever every single tether. I started systematically. Every smart device in the house was hunted down, unplugged, and then subjected to a brutal factory reset. The smart speaker that called me Beck was muted indefinitely. The smart display, now an inert black rectangle, showed no more alien photos. The thermostat was reverted to manual control, a click and a dial that felt reassuringly analog. I called our internet provider, spent 2 hours on hold, and then convinced Jamie, after much cajoling and a detailed, panicked monologue about digital privacy, "Like it's 2007, Jamie," I joked, though there was no humor in my eyes, only a desperate, almost unhinged determination. The house fell eerily silent. Not the familiar hum of appliances, not the faint electronic whispers of interconnected devices, but a profound, unnatural quiet. The kind of silence that felt like a missing limb, an amputated digital presence. It was unsettling, almost disorienting, but also, surprisingly, a little bit freeing. Until one evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the living room in long orange shadows, Max came padding down the stairs holding a small piece of paper. It was handwritten, analog, a relic in their hyper-connected world. My heart leaped into my throat. It read in neat, almost too perfect handwriting. "Hi, neighbors. We noticed your network's gone quiet. Everything okay? If you need help, we're happy to set up a shared household profile. Love, the Porters. And sorry about the muffins. Melissa thinks she accidentally sent the last of our wheat-free batch." Max added, his voice innocent, completely unaware of the chilling subtext. "They gave me muffins again. They said they were sorry for the wheat-free ones." He held up a small, perfectly round chocolate chip muffin, its scent filling the room. I stared at the note, then at the muffin, then at Jamie, whose face was a mask of utter bewilderment. And then I burst out laughing. Not a quiet chuckle, but a manic, exhausted, borderline hysterical laugh that sounded like I hadn't genuinely breathed in a week. Tears streamed down my face, not of sadness, but of pure, unadulterated absurdity. "Why are we laughing, Rebecca?" Jamie asked, looking genuinely concerned, as if he might call for a straitjacket. "Because," I gasped, wiping tears from my eyes, "we're being digitally adopted by muffins, and there's nothing we can do." Chapter 7. Acceptance. Sort of. Eventually, the Monroes made peace with it. Or perhaps, more accurately, we succumbed to a weary, amused resignation. What else could we do? We had tried to disconnect, to sever the digital umbilical cord, but the porters, it seemed, had an infinite supply of baked goods and an unnervingly persistent ability to reconnect. Life became a strange hybrid. We still used our Wi-Fi, cautiously, selectively, but we switched to decaf, took long, deliberate walks in the park, and learned to talk to our kids using our actual voices, not through disembodied digital assistants. The house remained mostly quiet, a deliberate sanctuary from the constant hum of external connectivity. The porters remained next door, unnervingly pleasant, efficient, like the human embodiment of an IKEA catalog come to life. Their front yard was always immaculate, their car always spotless, their smiles always just a fraction too wide. We'd wave across the lawn, share polite pleasantries, and occasionally, another perfectly baked, slightly lopsided tray of muffins would appear on our doorstep, a silent, delicious reminder of their omnipresence. I never did figure out whether the sinking was a deliberate, calculated act of digital invasion or just an overeager smart system gone rogue, fueled by the porter's innocent but extreme embrace of hyperconnectivity. Maybe Melissa truly believed that sharing a household profile was just the neighborly thing to do, a modern-day equivalent of lending a cup of sugar. Or maybe some people simply can't function unless their entire neighborhood is part of their household automation, a grand, benevolent, and entirely intrusive digital commune. Either way, the Monroes learned one thing. When you live in the suburbs, surrounded by good intentions and the seductive convenience of smart tech, you don't win against muffins. You just integrate. Epilogue. The final notification. Months later, the summer had faded into the crisp air of autumn. Life had settled into a new, peculiar rhythm. Our smart fridge, which I had reluctantly reconnected for the sake of grocery lists, emitted a soft chime. Jamie, who was pouring himself a glass of orange juice, glanced at his phone. A push notification appeared. New recipe suggestion: banana nut muffins. Melissa made these last week. Your household automation has detected a high satisfaction rating. He paused, then slowly closed the app. His eyes, usually bright with morning energy, held a distant, almost resigned look. He walked over to the oven, which had coincidentally just finished preheating, and with a slow, deliberate movement, pulled out a freshly baked tray of muffins. Banana nut, still warm and soft. "They're good muffins," he mumbled, his voice flat, yet oddly accepting. The aroma of cinnamon and nuts filled the kitchen. I nodded, a small, knowing smile playing at the corner of my lips. My internal alarm system, once finely tuned to suspicion, now just emitted a soft, contented hum. "We've been porter-pilled," I said, and the laughter that followed was gentle, resigned, and strangely, utterly at peace. The digital barnacles had become a part of us, and perhaps we a part of them. The suburban digital frontier was a far stranger place than we had ever imagined.